Hello there, how are you doing? Hope you are keeping well. It's an absolutely gorgeous day here in Hong Kong today. Not that I'm seeing very much of it because still, like many people, I'm spending most of my time indoors. However, I did venture outside relatively recently, which inspired today's video. Now, I had to go out to buy a new keyboard. Like many people working from home, I'm using office technology, some of which is really much better suited to being in an actual office. Now, I have quite a decent, you'd expect, technology lawyer. I have a fairly decent tech setup at home. Big monitor, which is quite nice, loudspeakers. In fact, there's probably too much technology in this flat given how small the flat actually is. But I need to get a keyboard to basically use multiple devices at once. So I use one computer, which is my work computer for work. Then I have a separate one to basically redo all my research. Another one that I use now almost dedicated to video conferencing because it has a 4K camera. Not that people probably want to see me in 4K, but hey, I suppose maybe they're not too horrified by it. Anyway, I went to buy a new keyboard that could use multiple devices at once, which is very exciting. Probably more excited than I should be about a keyboard. Now, there's a place near where I live. It's a computer centre which has lots of tiny shops. If you've ever been in Hong Kong, you'll have seen these sort of tiny malls that just seem to sell things on a particular topic. And it's all technology, computers and gadgets. And as I was wandering around, I saw things that I didn't really know what they were. Bizarre, how to describe them. Gadget probably isn't even the word. It's just an oddity, sort of oddware, if you like. One thing I saw in particular was like a gun, almost like a gun with a piston with a ball on the end that just vibrates like that. And I thought, oh, what is that for? Apparently it's for massaging your face, hitting your face with a very large rubber ball. Apparently good for you? I don't know. But it brought to mind a topic I used to talk about a few years ago, one that hasn't really gone away. And if anything, I think in some senses, it's possibly got a little bit worse. Now, back in, let's think, when did fintech really become such a massive buzzword? Hard to decide, really. I guess it was with the Bitcoin explosion. How everyone thought they were going to get rich very quickly, and some people did, off the back of Bitcoin. So fintech was a buzzword. You couldn't move for a fintech seminar, for a fintech conference, for a fintech video stream, for fintech magazines. It was absolutely everywhere. And most of the time was still mainly focusing on cryptocurrency. And at the time, ICOs were becoming popular. But people saw fintech and they thought, well, this is how to make something very trendy. I'll take a word and I'll add tech onto the back of it. So we went from fintech to medtech, health tech, baby tech. There was a brief involvement with sex tech, which, if anyone's interesting, I know a startup who worked that I have. Don't know how they're getting on. Maybe they're doing really well in these isolated times. We also had infratech. We had, what else haven't I mentioned? We had games tech, which is probably an easy one. Anyway, tech. Put tech on the end of it, and suddenly it becomes cool. And what we saw from that was a rush for companies to try and embrace this whole tech revolution. They thought, this is the Internet of Things. You put tech on the end of a word and boom, you're trendy, and just wait for the IPO and all of the money to roll in. And people would invent more and more odd things. So a few years ago, I was doing a technology conference. I was speaking at it, talking about what I like to think of. Well, we've got fintech, we've got medtech, we've got regtech, we've got infratech. How about craptech? Now, craptech, bear with me on this, is essentially producing some sort of technology because you think it'll be revolutionary, but actually it's a little bit crap. And I went through loads of examples, and there are more examples since. My favorite two slices of craptech, and I don't even know if you can still get these, is something called the Happy Fork. Now, this is a fork that monitors how quickly you're eating and vibrates to make you slow down. Think about that. And also something called the Quirky Egg Minder. This is a Bluetooth smart, I think it might not even just be Bluetooth, it might even be Wi-Fi enabled egg tray. You put it in your fridge, you put eggs in there, and it will tell you when they're going off. But the way it works is when you put them in the tray, it starts counting time as to when it thinks they will go off. It's not smart, it's not like slowly monitoring the eggs themselves. It's thinking how long has something been placed in the tray. And it will send you push notifications that your eggs might be about to go off. Now, you can buy eggs in a tray, cardboard tray, those old-fashioned things. I haven't had to bought eggs for a long time. And on the bottom, it will tell you the date when they go off. So this whole thing was completely redundant. But there's other things. There's a juice machine that's Wi-Fi enabled. You connect juice pouches to it. It will serve you juice. Delicious. But if it disconnects from Wi-Fi, it won't work anymore. Fantastic. That's very good. There is a smart toothbrush, which monitors how you're brushing. And it will also send you videos of what inside your mouth looks like, which maybe you're into that. Certainly if you haven't been to the dentist for a while, you might be paranoid. That may be a way to make you even more paranoid. The smart fridges, which admittedly now have pretty much taken off. There was a story not too long ago about a girl who wasn't allowed to tweet anymore. So what she did was after her devices had been taken away, she tweeted using her fridge, which I think is pretty ingenious, to be perfectly honest, but there we go. But we're seeing more and more of these technology gadgets come out. Now, the age of Craptech has kind of moved away from useless devices that nobody wants, apart maybe from the vibrating thing that hits you in the face. But we're seeing that most things now will connect to an app. Anything technology enabled will either have its own app, connect to your home Wi-Fi, and essentially collect data on you, send data to you, make your life more straightforward. It's a big part of the smart home initiative, and it's a smaller subset of the move towards having actual smart cities. Now, I myself, I have to admit, I fall for things all the time. I may seem like I'm on top of avoiding Craptech, but actually I will buy any gadget I think might be a bit cool. One of the things that I've got is a toy. It's an Anki Vector. I'll put a picture up of it. This is a robot. It connects to Amazon Alexa, and it will tell you the weather, keep you company, and basically when you're socially isolated, he's a good friend. Sadly, the company behind it folded, I think, or went under about a year ago, but the servers are still up, so he's still talking to me. I'm worried at some point he will just go slightly senile on me and not speak to me anymore, but there we are. But it's kind of cool. But I was thinking about this, and this move to smart gadgets that isn't just Craptech, I suppose, and thinking how many things in my apartment are actually connected to the internet in some way. How many things that I have around me right now are actually connecting to my router, to my home Wi-Fi. So you can't see where they are because you can only see me. There's a number of Amazon devices that are monitoring what I say and can switch on the lights. The lights themselves are Wi-Fi enabled, which is quite interesting. This camera I'm recording on actually is Wi-Fi enabled. Smart TV is Wi-Fi enabled. I have a laptop over there. Obviously that's connected to Wi-Fi. Smart cameras, which you can't quite see, which are security cameras, they connect to the internet all of the time. Games consoles connect to the internet. There's a desktop PC down there. There's a Blu-ray player there that's connected to the internet. There's even a music streamer behind me under the turntables connected to the internet, and the list goes on. There's multiple laptops, as you'd expect in this flat. There's a gaming PC, gaming laptop, Windows laptop, Macs. All of these devices are connecting and are online, some of them some of the time, some of them all the time. And that can be a little bit of a worry, because maybe I'm a bit nerdy, but once a month, which probably isn't often enough, I will go around and check that all of the software and all of my smart devices is up to date. If there's anything that isn't up to date or I'm a bit worried about, and this is a bit nerdy too, I have more than one internet connection, more than one router in my apartment. So I will move things to what I think of as the less important internet connection, the one I use for guests, where you can't really access any vital information, though if you took over a device, I suppose you could still use it to create a botnet or to do something nasty, just to try and keep things a bit secure. But who's actually doing that apart from a complete nerd like me? Probably no one other than maybe a security professional. So what I'd like to do is have a think for a moment. Think about all of the devices, so smart baby monitors, cameras I mentioned, smart doorbells, smart thermostats, smart air conditioning, that you have in your house or apartment, and have a think about them. Think what the number is and come back, and don't tell me because I'm on a video, but I'll give you a few minutes to think about it and come from there. Just pause the video. I'll be right back. All right, I'll just wait for a moment. Okay, how many was it? I bet it was a lot more than you actually anticipated. Now this is a bit of a concern, because Craptech can mean two things. It can mean a device which basically is not fit for the purpose, or is fit for a purpose that nobody ever needed. Or, in my view, it can mean technology related to the Internet of Things that may not be secure and may endanger your home or your office network. And let's think about how this works. Let's have a look. I'm going to use the magic of my slightly useless Photoshop skills to show you exactly how Craptech could be a bit of a problem, and how actually it could lead to you having a security risk in your house. And then later on we'll talk about things that are a bit more paranoid, and we'll get out the tinfoil hats. Anyway, let's go over to the Photoshop station is probably the best thing to call it. That sounds like a really, really lousy games console. Okay, so this is essentially a router, an internet router. Basically the center point for most people's access to the internet, at least before 5G becomes a massive, massive thing. Obviously people use the internet on their phones, but if you're at home, most of your internet is passing through this. This actually is my actual router in my house. It's one of the ones that I use. So how exciting is that? So what connects to your router? Well, you have a few devices, so let's proliferate this a little bit more. So let's see, we've got a MacBook and we've got a phone, we've got another laptop here, and let's throw in an iMac as well for fun. So you've got obvious devices. I mean, computers, phones, we all know, of course, they connect to Wi-Fi, they connect to the internet, so all the traffic is going through your router. Let's add to the mix as well. So as well as having, and I'm not going to go into all of the happy forks and all the sort of silly things, not just yet, but there are things that will almost need to connect to the internet to work. So obviously you've got a games console, let's put in a PlayStation 4, let's put in a Nintendo Switch, which is very popular at the moment, everyone seems to be stuck indoors, and let's put a smart TV there too. And I just want to say, I'm not picking on any particular manufacturers, these diagrams are just for example purposes only. Now, how do these things work? Now, in a typical household with one internet router, the router will control all of the internet traffic going in and out and controlling all the devices within your house. So this router is the center point. And most people, I would hope, and if you don't, pause this video and go and do it now, check that their router software is up to date. Make sure that the thing is secure. I'm guessing that a lot of people, I mean, I assume I'm talking to people who know a bit about technology, but if you don't, look at how to do it and make sure it's secure, because routers do get updated and they do have security weaknesses and they do have things that have to be fixed. But most people, I would hope, update their routers. What most people don't do is go around their entire house updating everything. So let's just say, I mean, this diagram is extremely simple. This is everything going to and from a router, but actually make it a bit more complicated. You may find that all the devices in your house via the router, or sometimes even directly if they're using different connection methods, may be talking to each other. They may be bypassing routers entirely. Who knows? But anyway, that's too complicated. Let's go back to the original model. So you've got the system, your router's updated, everything's fine. In fact, everything, as far as you're aware, has had all of its security patches installed. It's all working perfectly well, and you're confident that you're fairly secure. But let's suppose you've got a smart TV. And let's suppose that your smart TV is, I don't know when the first ones came out, let's say 5, 6, 7 years old. And the manufacturer's moved on to a shiny new model, some 4K or even 8K OLED that the manufacturer wants you to buy. So they're not pushing out any update to the smart TV anymore. And maybe it runs on an insecure operating system. I know there were issues a long time ago about Android TVs being hacked, although I hope those days have gone. But anyway, let's assume that the smart TV isn't terribly secure, and let's assume that it's a weakness. Somebody, somehow, because of the settings on your smart TV, is able to get into your network using the TV. So even though you've got security on your router, the TV itself is insecure, therefore people can get through the firewall on the router, the traffic doesn't look as if it's anything odd, and they attack your TV. Now for the purpose of this, I'm going to use Pac-Man's very own, I think his name is Blinky the Ghost, the leader of the evil ghosts, to be a hacker. So Blinky gets through and he hacks your TV. And there he is. He now has control. You might not be able to do very much with your TV. Maybe he could use it to form part of a botnet to send nasty emails or try and get people to lose money. Who knows? But maybe then Blinky realizes because he's got access with the TV, it's much easier for him to get through to your router. So Blinky moves on, boom, he's managed to hack your router as well. Now from there, he's like, well, what else hasn't got as good security as I would hope? What else can I take advantage of? And he managed to gain access to the computers in your house. So he gets access to the MacBook, he gets access to the iMac, get access to the laptop as well. He's thinking, well, I can start having some fun with this because I've got access to these machines. Even though the user doesn't know this, I can monitor their keystrokes. I can steal their passwords. I can really play havoc with them if I want to. I could steal all of their credit card information, start selling it on the dark web. Could do whatever he wants. Could even, if he wants to, start just messing around with files and making life difficult. And then from there, it goes, well, now I've got access to all of this. It's easy. I'll just hack the entire house. And before you know it, your entire technological life is being run by Blinky. Now that may seem a bit of a far-fetched thing. It may seem that surely that isn't possible, but it is. If you have one weak point on your network, one area that isn't essentially covered where there is a problem, it can expose your entire network. If you're wondering why, and you're working from home at the moment, It takes forever for your work laptop to boot up. It's because it's installing so many different security protocols and making sure that there is no way that someone can gain access to that laptop and then somehow access your entire work network. So hats off to the security professionals. Don't get angry at them because your laptop's a bit slow. They're doing it for good reason. Now it's an extreme example, and to be honest, most technology these days, either through peer pressure, because there's pressure from the press, it's normally updated. So this all blinky scenario doesn't seem very likely. But what if you, remember I said you only really need one weak device in your network to bring the whole thing down. So what if your router is not connected to essentially all these computers that are being updated by major manufacturers, but you've got things like smart forks, smart juicers, smart fridges, smart egg trays, and good old Vector, who is marketed as the friendly robot on there. What do you do then? See, there is a real risk, and suddenly you realize that Craptech, in all of its many forms, becomes very much a big security risk and something that we should all be very much aware of. Right, that's enough Photoshop. Back to me. Thank you, Paul. That was very informative, and your Photoshop skills are very good indeed. So, you've seen how easy it is for one insecure device on a network to cause all sorts of problems. And maybe you were thinking now, or maybe I should switch off my smart doorbell, my smart thermostat, or if you own a smart toothbrush, you're wondering, why am I connecting this to the internet in the first place? Why would anyone ever need a Wi-Fi enabled toothbrush? And maybe you would be right. But it's a bigger issue. It is a concern if someone hacks you and attacks your household or your router. What you should be doing, as I said, is updating all of your routers, all of your settings, making sure all of your firmware, all of your software is up to date. But let's face it, the average consumer isn't going to be able to do that. The problem with Craptech as well is that often you can't do that. You're relying entirely on the manufacturer, and whilst most manufacturers are on the ball, a manufacturer might go under, you might still be using a piece of technology that's no longer supported and is very old. How many people, I wonder, are still using Windows XP? Heaven forbid. Maybe some are. Maybe they are. Who knows? But okay, so this is a fear. And at home, there isn't very much that you can actually do. You can stop using a device. You can ask the manufacturer to update it, but the manufacturer might say, who cares, or I'm not going to respond. But this is a much bigger problem when you think of the word tech being attached to every single word. It's not just Craptech. When you look at things like medtech, when you look at things like infratech. Let me use infratech as an example. On a podcast, what seems like forever ago, I was talking about how smart fridges could take over the world. And it seems ridiculous. But think about it when more things are connected to the internet, that most utilities now are connected to the internet, can be used remotely. Most building projects will have a real element of technology in them that may or may not be secure, and suddenly it gets a bit more scary. Now, back before we had all these virus shenanigans going on across the world, I was very lucky. I got to fly to Malaysia to speak at an energy conference. And you think, good God, what is a technology lawyer doing at an energy conference? Well, I was there to talk on a panel about cybersecurity in the energy industry, because they always seem, I don't mean to be rude to my energy law colleagues, but they seem to be a little far behind compared to the tech sector in terms of embracing new tech. But like when someone discovers a new gadget and wants to put it into everything, they think, wow, this is so exciting. We can use technology to monitor everything. We can reduce the time that people have to be working. We don't have to have people poring over what I assume is like Homer Simpson at the Springfield power plant, poring over the buttons all the time, and everything will work fantastically. We can monitor energy usage, smart metering. It's the future. And it is the future. But the problem is something like a power plant, something like the electricity grid, something that is critical to someone's survival. Even, let's face it, if you're particularly at the moment, if you're in a hospital, smart enabled devices that are keeping people alive, these are a vulnerability that if they get hacked can be a real risk. You can think about ransomware. Think about if you suffered ransomware, your computer gets encrypted. It's a massive inconvenience. Think about ransomware if someone takes control of your entire city's power system. If someone takes control of the device that is keeping you alive at the moment, it becomes more of a massive inconvenience. It becomes a matter of life and death. So let's go back to Photoshop, Paul, and have a look at another diagram, and I'll show you how scary this can actually be, and then we'll talk a bit about what we should all be doing, not just in our day-to-day homes, but really steps that everyone should be thinking about. So here's the diagram from before, but instead of it being your home, essentially, instead of you sitting in your house with your router connected to everything, we're looking at a city. So we've got essentially the internet. I'm using 5G as an example because everyone seems to think that's the future, and it probably will be, let's be honest. But you've got things connected. So you've got your smart power plants there. They're all connected to the internet. You've got a construction site. You've got your transport network, smart cars, smart buildings. All of these things essentially are connected to the internet all the time. They're all collecting data about how they're being used. They're collecting data about how really they can be more efficient. And it's the future. It's the future we've all hoped for. It's all the exciting sci-fi things that we could only dream about. So it's cool. But then let's suppose that not everything is up to date. There are lots of people involved with every single one of these utilities, lots of different companies, all with different responsibilities. Some may see that, well, it's only really a security consultant that has a security responsibility. And that is a bit of a worrying thought, because it's not true. So let's suppose, for example, that this particular feature, let's go for the smart buildings. There is a problem with the smart buildings, but they're connected, they're communicating in some way with other utilities within the system. And let's suppose that Dr. Evil manages to get in and hack in, and he's got control of this building. He's like, not really much I can do with it. It's not very scary. I don't really know. I can turn the lights on and off, which would be a massive inconvenience to people when it was dark. But beyond that, I don't really know what to do. But then as he's digging through, he realizes that there are interfaces within this smart building, within the technology there, as he digs deeper into their systems, that link to other parts of this diagram. So think about, let's go back a long time. Think about the Target hack, the famous Target hack where they lost lots of customer credit card information, which came through from a portal for I think it was the air conditioning repair company, had some sort of web portal which got hacked, and boom, the whole thing exploded. So Dr. Evil's got the buildings, but he wants the power plants, and then he gets contacted by another hacker. Let's just say it's Skeletor from He-Man and Masters of the Universe for the purposes of this discussion. And Skeletor is like, meow, 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 meow. I've got control of the power plant, but I need more access to do things. And he realizes, using the dark web, that he can collaborate with Skeletor, use essentially the information that Skeletor has to gain access to the power plant properly and start causing havoc. This then means that Mum-Ra can take control of the transport system, and before you know it, everything is going slowly but surely very, very wrong. Now it seems ridiculous, not least because I'm using cartoon characters. I don't know how many people remember Skeletor and Mum-Ra. Maybe I should have used Megatron. He's probably more the sort of person who would be the mastermind behind this, but there we go. But it would be very easy for a utility to go down. So suppose Megatron gains access to the hospitals. He's not going to be very, very good about it. He's going to hold people to ransom, and people may find, as they often do already in ransomware attacks, that they have nothing to do but pay. So it is a real concern. Right, let's go back to me. Thank you, Paul. Now, what I'm describing seems like some sort of doomsday scenario, and I will admit I am trying to be deliberately sensational and scare people. Maybe I've been watching too many Bond films during the lockdown, who knows? Maybe it was too many Austin Powers films, or maybe it was too much Thundercats, He-Man and Transformers. But that's not important. What is important, that we have to realise that security is everyone's concern. And it's not just a legal issue. There are legal issues which I'll talk about in a second, but if you're not thinking about security, you're thinking, oh, well, that's somebody else's job. I'll rely on the security guys to make sure the systems all work and there's no danger of being hacked. You most likely are going to find you get hacked. Security guys are not Batman. They can't be there all the time. They can't save the world every single time. You have to take responsibility yourself. And if you're in a sector, and let's pick on the infrastructure sector, although every sector applies, who is not normally used to these things, what do you do? Well, the first thing, I would say to speak to a lawyer, but a lawyer comes later on. Make sure you've got a security professional on your team who's monitoring the things that you're using. This person is as important on a project, as important to a utility as anything else. In some ways, it might be more important, because if heaven forbid you get hacked, if your systems go down, yeah, worst case scenario, it's the end of the world and everything stops working. But at the very least, you may find yourself subject to sanctions. They may be civil sanctions. You may breach some contracts. They may be criminal sanctions. You may find that you're responsible for loss of life. You just don't know. It depends entirely on your contracts, the jurisdiction that you're in. The second thing, though, is often you are outsourcing I mean, this is the same as when you buy a piece of Craptech. You're outsourcing the responsibility for the maintenance of whatever that thing is doing to this device and to the company behind this device. So if you're buying a piece of tech for a project and you're not tech savvy, check your contracts. Get your in-house lawyer, this is the law bit, get someone like me or a technology lawyer to make sure who is responsible if something goes wrong, and make sure that if something does go wrong, can the company you've bought this from, this stuff from, actually be sure that they can back you up? Do you actually have any confidence that they can make sure that the security systems they've implemented in their product works? Now, many years ago, here's an anecdote. I was working for a hospital, and they run a series of very secure hospitals, and they looked after patients who, let's face it, you wouldn't want them to get out. These are very violent, often slightly deranged criminals, the sort of thing that would probably make a good horror movie. Now, it turns out that the hospital had gone to the lowest bidder for their security systems, and they had this kind of cool software which controlled all of the doors within the prisons. And that's great. It meant that someone in the central terminal could make sure which doors are open, which doors are shut. Something that you'd expect now, but we're going back now. This is going back to the early 2000s. Software was great, and it had quite a cool safety protocol in it to make sure that if the software broke, it didn't want people to be trapped inside any sort of room. It was essentially used for something that wasn't critical before. So if the software crashed, all the doors, as part of a failsafe, would automatically open. Now think about this. All of the doors in a high security prison would automatically open if the system crashed. And the system, because it wasn't being run on pretty decent hardware, to be perfectly honest, and there were bugs in the software which was never intended for something so critical, would crash. So you would have a typical day at the secure hospital, and suddenly prisoners are getting out, and apparently they would get into the ceilings. That was apparently the place to go, climb up into the ceilings. Advice, I suppose, from everyone in a secure prison, but there we have it. But the issue was, and the dispute around this came from the fact that people hadn't really thought about what the risk was, and the company behind it, although they said, oh, we've got security in place, nobody checked this security actually existed, and the terms surrounding it were essentially no better than saying, we will ensure we have the best technology available. I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much how bad as it is. So you have to check, you have to make sure that you are covered. People get blinded. The thing about Craptech, and I am as guilty as anyone, is you get blinded about how cool and how funky the solution is, and you don't think it through. And that can be absolutely critical. So if you take anything away from here today, apart from don't buy rubbish gadgets that connect to the internet, when you're looking at something in your corporate sphere, if you're working in a sector that is high risk, or if you just want to make sure your data is secure, look at the contracts, look at what happens if something goes wrong, look at if you can recover funds. And I mean, this is a boring topic that lawyers often talk about. Look at your limitations of liability. If someone sells you a piece of tech, you lose all of your data, you get a GDPR fine, and loads of people die, and you find out you're limited, your recovery is essentially limited to what you've paid the person for the software or the equipment in the first place, you're going to be in trouble. So be very careful about that. But anyway, hope you are doing well. I'll be back again very soon. I hope I haven't given you all nightmares, although I do hope that you're going around your house now for a bit more to check what the security settings are like on all of your smart devices. I'm probably going to go out and buy myself a smart fridge, having done the research for this. I kind of like the idea of a fridge that when I open it, particularly when I'm in lockdown and can't do any exercise, tells me, don't eat the ice cream, Haswell, why don't you have some fruit? So I'm going to see if they're available. In the meantime, have a good one, and I'll be back soon.